Okay, today we're going to be learning about how to find out how many times something should happen or how many times would you expect something to happen. So it says, say you are going to do an experiment in which you flip a coin 100 times. How many times would you expect to get heads? Well, if you're flipping it 100 times, you would probably expect to get 50 heads. How many times would you expect to get tails? Again, 50 times. Prove it. Like, how do you know that? Well, let's think about this. The probability of getting heads on a coin, the theoretical probability, is 1 out of 2. There's 1 heads out of 2 different sides. Now, that's a 50% chance of getting heads. Now, thinking back to what we did yesterday, if we use part equals percent times whole, we want to know what part is 50%, which is 0.50, of the whole. The whole is how many times we're doing the experiment. In this case, it's 100. So if I do that math, part equals percent times whole, we do x equals 0.50 times 100. So 0.50 times 100, let me bring my calculator in. 0.5 times 100 is 50. So half of 100 is 50. Okay, now you could do the same thing for tails because the probability of getting tails is also 1/2. Okay, so let's go to some examples. It says if the spinner to the right is spun 100 times, the total number of spins, how many times would you predict that it would land on yellow? Okay, so let's take a look at the probability of getting yellow. Yellow is 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. So the chances of getting yellow is 1/5. Now we can actually leave it as a fraction. We don't have to change it to a percent. And the reason I say that is because sometimes you end up with repeating decimals and you don't want to work with that. Just leave it as a fraction. So if I do part, percent, and whole, I'm trying to find the part. 1/5 is my percentage. That's the same thing as the decimal form. And 100 times is how many times you're doing the experiment. So part equals percent times whole. So 1/5 of 100, take your calculator, 1/5 times 100 is 20. Now, if you changed 1/5 to a decimal, it would be 0.2. And if you multiplied that by 100, you'd still get 20. So it's the same answer whether you change it to a fraction or leave it as a fraction or change it to a decimal. All right. Let's go to example 2. The probability of winning money on a particular scratch and win is said to be 3 out of 10. If Mrs. Curcio buys 25 tickets, total amount of tickets, how many of those would we predict to be winners? So we just were told that the probability of winning is 3 out of 10. Like I said, you can leave it as 3 out of 10. That's fine. So part equals percent times whole. We know you win 3 out of 10 times, and we're doing it 25 times. So what is the part that would be winners? Part equals percent times whole. So 3/10 times 25. So 3/10 times 25 gives us 7.5 or 7.5. So 7.5 of those tickets would be winners. I want, obviously that is, you can't have half a winner, but that's about how many. I want you to try 3, 4, and 5 on your own. And then when you're done, go ahead and hit play again and make sure that you have the correct answers on your paper. All right, number 3, 20 students in Mrs. Robinson's first grade class put their name in a hat. Each day she selects a name, and the students get to pass out papers for the day. There are 180 school days in the year. How many times do you think each student will be the paper passer outer? So the probability that a student will be picked in the class is 1 out of 20. Say it's you. You are 1 person out of 20. So let's figure out part equals percent times whole. My percent is 1 out of 20. There are 180 days in the year. So out of those 180 days, how many times would you be picked? So part equals percent times whole. So x is equal to 1 over 20 times 180. So 1 out of 20 times 180 gives us 9. So about 9 days of the year you would be picked. All right, number 4, it's been found that there's a 15% chance, 3 out of 20, that you can win a particular game. How many wins would you have if you played 50 times? So we know that we would, the probability of winning is 3 out of 20. You could use 15% as well. It doesn't matter. So part, percent, and whole. Percent is 0.15. We're playing 50 times, so how many times would you actually win? So part equals percent times whole. 0.15 times 50. So 0.15 times 50 is 7.5. Obviously, you can't win half a day, so that's approximately how many times you would win. All right, number 5, a number cube is rolled. We roll it 500 times. How many times do you think it would be even? So let's find the probability of getting an even number. Now that's a 1/2 chance. 3 out of 6 numbers are even, so that's 1/2. Part equals percent times whole. So my probability is half the time. We're doing it 500 times. So part equals percent times whole. We're doing 1/2 times 500. And half of 500 is 250 times. So we would expect to get an even about 250 times. All right, I'm going to have you try the homework, and we will go over that in class tomorrow.